Going to go live. All right. Hi, this is Damien, Marie AtHope, and I'm an Axiological Atheist. And I'm here with Kate. Kate, could you tell us about yourself and what kind of atheist you are?
Well, I usually describe myself as a rabid-and-screaming atheist, but that's perhaps not as accurate as you might want to hear. I am a YouTuber. I have a channel called BionicDance where I advocate for atheism and also animate, which is a lot of fun. I'm a lesbian, and let's see, I talk about religion primarily because it makes other people's lives worse. I mean, if religious people wanted to believe whatever they wanted to believe, I'd be okay with it, but they seem to want to foist it on top of everybody else. And obviously LGBT issues centers really closely on that, which is why I mentioned the lesbian thing. It's not like a mating call or anything. I mean, that's, oh, you want to know what kind of atheist I am? I like to call myself Well, I like to call myself an agnostic atheist, but unfortunately those words don't always mean the same thing to everybody. I mean, gnosis is the word for knowledge, which is where agnostic comes from. If you say you're agnostic, really what you're saying is there's information I don't have. And I don't believe in a God because I see no evidence for one. I lack any information that would make me suspect that a God exists, so I'm not a theist, therefore I'm an atheist. So, but I'm also an apistivist, which means I won't have faith. It's kind of like an extension of the agnostic thing, where I'm going to believe something because I've been given a reason to. I'm not going to believe in it just because I believe in it. I'm not going to have that kind of faith. And that's another problem. That word gets screwed up with a lot of people, where, I mean, faith can also mean loyalty. You know, I have faith in my friends kind of thing. But faith in your friends is usually based on evidence. You know, it's usually based on seeing their previous behavior. But religious faith, believing in a God, there's no evidence for one, but you believe anyway. And that's something I just won't do. So I looked up the word for faith in Greek, which is, I'm never sure if it's pistis or pistis or something like that, but I stuck the A on top of it and made apistivist. And the word's been kind of popularized by the YouTuber Ra. So that's pretty cool. I've heard some people have actually submitted it to dictionaries. So who knows? That might be like my way of changing the world. I don't know.
Well, that's cool. And so, you're a strong atheist, or that was not how you're defining it?
Well, I mean, that is certainly a valid term. It's not usually the words I use, but I don't object.
Okay. So, I wanted to also ask, were you raised in faith, or no?
No. I was raised by hippies, by very, you know, like open-minded, free-thinking, eat natural, healthy food hippies, you know. And while my parents did try a few things, you know, when I was little, they never forced it on me. You know, so I got to watch them try various things. Like they went through this like Siddha yoga Hindu phase for a while, and I saw a lot of that. But it was never like okay, and you have to be one of us, learn all the chants, dress in the robes. None of that really happened. So, and I have friends who were various forms of, well, usually Christian, and also my mom is culturally Jewish without really being, you know, actually religious, actually devout as a Jew. And my dad was raised Italian Catholic. So I saw, like, our side of the family on both sides, really not religious, but the other sides of the family, yeah, I mean, not like rabid conservative types, but they certainly followed the faith, you know. So I saw a lot of that too. But again, I got to sort of stand back and observe it all, you know. So I was never religious myself. Like we were talking about before, you know, in the pre-show, the closest I ever came to religion at all was when I spent, I mean, I'm a major Star Wars fan. I wanted the Force to be real, really bad. But other than that, no.
So that's interesting. And how was it like then growing up, basically not believing and having other people that did? How'd that make you see them, or did that make you see religion any different?
Not really. I mean, like I say, my objection to religion is more that people interfere in other folks' lives than anything else. And our family was pretty tolerant. My friends were not all that devout, or if they were, they never brought it up. I mean, I was raised in Vermont, and Vermont is very liberal-ish, I guess. I mean, hell, I was raised just south of where Bernie Sanders was mayor for like decades. So, you know, progressive is maybe better than liberal. I don't know. But the point is that it never really became much of an issue. I mean, yeah, I thought it was strange. I was like, you believe what now? Whatever. You know, so it never really affected me the way I hear it affects other people. Some of the stories people tell, I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I escaped that.
Yeah, so your immediate friends, did you have any pushback from or see any pushback from religion in your environment at all, or you just had none?
Not really, no. I mean, I saw it on the news, you know. I mean, I was raised in the 80s. Obviously, there was a lot of, like, you know, you'd have some people who would be outspoken about, you know, being gay, lesbian, or whatever, and religious people would lose their shit just as much as they do today. You know, so I saw that, but it was never really impacting on my own personal world, not until a lot later.
Okay. And then you said that you're lesbian. Did you come out to your parents, and how did they react?
I never really had to. Not really. I mean, it was just one of those things where it just sort of happened by osmosis. It's like, oh, yeah, that's what you're into. Okay. I mean, again, raised by hippies. You know, like I never had to fit a role. Not really.
Yeah, that must have been nice. I don't know what that's like. My mom would still like me to fill the role. But so as you were growing up, so did you did obviously you didn't believe. So back then, did you really feel a need to be like you are now, like to speak out against religion, or because your environment was kind of a neutral, you didn't really feel any need to be against religion back then, more than just think it was stupid?
I didn't. No, it wasn't until quite recently, I want to say 6-7 years ago, whatever. I mean, I started my YouTube channel to show off my animation work. That's why it's called BionicDance. It's a reference to an 80s cartoon show. But a friend of mine kept pointing out all of these horrible things being done in the name of religion, and I was like, I got to do something. I got to say something. And so, yeah, I mean, sometimes I regret not starting another channel because I want the name BionicDance associated with my animation, but I'm still glad I spoke out. And, you know, so it wasn't until, I want to, gosh, when did I start this? Like 2004, 2006, something like that? I don't know. I'd have to go look at my first video. But, yeah, I really felt the need to say something, to be active, to I mean, like I say, not even really fight against religion necessarily. I mean, I think it's stupid, and I wish people weren't indoctrinated into it. But the main reason I argue against it, try to prove that it's false, is to get people to stop believing it so that they will stop, you know, being jerks about it. And I mean, even then, if they stopped interfering with the lives of everybody except those in their religion, well, there's still those people who, like, send their kids to gay re-education camps or whatever. Yeah. And that's not okay either. You know? No. So I guess once religion has been either neutered of power or has been sanitized to the point where, yeah, people believe in this God thing, but whatever, we're not going to make it hurt. You know, and until that happens, I'll probably keep speaking out.
And so your friend told you things. Were there things that you said about 6 years ago or whatever that were distinct, like 9/11? It was that kind of stuff, or the New Atheist movement, or I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like was there like a particular thing that made you say, "Wow, I need to do something"?
Well, it certainly wasn't 9/11. I mean, okay. I obviously felt pretty bad about that one. Everyone did. I thought that was an outrage, but that really wasn't what inspired it. I mean, for one thing, I'm not sure how much YouTube really existed back then. I mean, maybe it did. I'd have to look it up, but I was not a YouTuber at that time. So, you know, that had kind of died down as an issue a little bit by the time I started making my videos. It was probably more like LGBT, abortion, you know, denying evolution and climate change and all that stuff, where I was just like, this is not okay. you know, this is impacting us. I got to speak out because the world could be such a better place without all this crap. Now, that's not to say that I don't object to what's going on in the Middle East, but I will admit that my reasons for doing so are kind of on the selfish side, because I'd love to see us spending all that money on NASA instead of the war. Imagine where we could be if we'd taken all that money from the war and poured it into science. Oh, what I wouldn't give. So.
Yeah, I can understand that. What would you say is the like thinking back on all the videos you've done? What was the most fun for you to go against, or you felt was the most beneficial to the atheist movement or society or whatever?
I'm not sure which one is the most beneficial. I'd have to go and look. I mean, there are some that have, you know, like 3-4 times the number of views most of my others have, and I guess those would probably be the most influential. But as far as the most fun, I have an animated series called Rational Station. And the most recent episode, I revamped all the character models, so let's face it, the original ones look creepy, these kind of don't. And, you know, it's this like 8-minute long sort of discussion about the nature of life and death. And that was a lot of fun to make, although it took about a month per minute to make it. Mind you, that was because I only had the one computer, and so I couldn't work while I was rendering. I have a render farm now, so I can keep working while the video is processing, and that will make things a lot faster when I work on my next project. But I'd have to say that doing the Rational Station videos was definitely the most fun.
That's cool. Yeah, I think because you have a unique approach where you seem to have fun when you're interacting with people. Something I probably wouldn't think of doing, because I usually when I don't like something, I usually am mad. I don't think of being funny, but I think your approach is probably easier for some people to take than maybe I would take, because I would be more serious. And I don't know that I'm always able to get to everybody because of that. So is there a reason that you did that, or is that just your personality?
Well, actually, I mean, for the first year or two when I was making my videos, I would pick a topic and script something out and just talk about that, read the script. I mean, I would try to read it as though I wasn't reading it, obviously, because let's face it, if someone's just robotically reading lines, it doesn't work so well. But, you know, after a while, I started realizing that people were being, I guess, more effective if they were responding to other people, if they were looking at the issues and saying, you know, here, let me respond to these specific things you're saying. And I think part of why I switched was also because I started realizing, hey, there is a way to download those other people's videos. Like, for a while, I just didn't have the software to do it, and I didn't know how other people were doing it. I mean, you know, big slip on my part, I probably could have just Googled it, but whatever. So once I started having the tech to do that, I started doing that more. In fact, almost all of my videos now are responses to other people, just because in some ways I've said everything there is to be said that can be said without it being a response, without it being a rebuttal. You know, in fact, I've said it over and over. A lot of people have criticized me for saying the same thing over and over. And while I agree that could get boring, on the other hand, the other side keeps saying the same thing over and over. I don't actually understand the people who are like, well, I said it once, I don't need to say it again. Like, yeah, but this is kind of an ongoing fight. You have to keep saying the same thing, or they win just by virtue of how much they put their side out there. So, I mean, I can understand being bored by hearing yet another argument for why, you know, you shouldn't have faith or why morality isn't objective. I get that, but at the same time, you know, you gotta do it.
Yeah, I get criticized too for constantly saying the same things over again. They're like, you know, why don't you just go live your life and be happy? It's like because they're an active force trying to change that we could ever live a really happy life without having them interfere. So I really appreciate. So I don't agree with them that you shouldn't say things you should.
I mean, okay, granted, it might lose me a subscriber or two because they're like, oh, this again, you know. But at the same time, there will always be new blood. So, you know, and I mean, really, like, don't get me wrong. I'd love to have subscribers in the hundreds of thousands, like some people do. But at the same time, if the message gets out there, I mean, I'm not in this to make money, although I do like that part. I'm not in this for personal fame, although I do like that part. I mean, let's face it, let's be honest. But at the same time, if the message gets out there, I would even be happy to do it anonymously as long as it had the appropriate effect.
Yeah, well, and that's truly a difference, I think, that some of the people that are usually on the religious side, they're all about their image and trying to promote themselves, even though some of the stuff they say is like, you know, cotton candy. I mean, it's like, even if you were a believer, it would be almost substanceless. You know?
Yeah.
So I think there's a real difference. Even like you said, R and Raw, you know, there's a lot of people on our side that do a lot of stuff and they're not making a lot of money. They're really doing it a lot more because they care.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty interesting. So what would you say is a goal that you have for the future of your page?
Well, I mean, I'm working on a couple of animated projects right now, although I don't know when I'll get to another Rational Station episode because I'm actually doing like some personal fiction that I want to do. It's sort of a space opera kind of thing, and I've been dying for years to do a Tron fan film, so I might do one of those. As far as anything else, I mean, I just started doing my Bible reading again. For a while, like 3.5 years ago, I read a bunch of the Bible. I'm trying to do it cover to cover, just sort of putting my own spin on it, like reading what's there, but trying to make it entertaining, trying to make sense of it if I can, and also giving my perspective on what it is. I mean, let's face it, if we're going to critique somebody else's side, we ought to actually know what inspires that side. It's kind of like I actually went and listened to a bunch of Justin Bieber to feel like I was justified in making fun of the guy. You know, because like it's popular to say, haha, what a wank, but if I've never actually experienced what he does and why people hate him, I would feel like a hypocrite. So I'm going through the Bible for that reason, and I just put out chapter 1 through 4 of 2 Kings. I had gotten stuck 3.5 years ago on 2 Kings because, first of all, it's 20 pages long, and that would be a really long video to do it all at once. And there actually is a lot happening in there that it's very difficult to cover all of it and not, you know, leave out important points or not make it so generalized as to be confusing. So I've decided to break it up into parts. So, I mean, chapters 1 through 4 was 13 minutes long, and there's 24 chapters. So, yeah, so I'm working on that too. I promise I will one day finish the damn Bible. You know.
So my question would be, once you finish the Bible, are you going to do the Quran or do the Bhagavad Gita or?
I've had some people ask me to do the Quran. I don't know. I don't know. I'll think about it, but. I mean, I'll probably be so sick of doing a holy book after the Bible that I probably won't. I don't know.
It's actually a lot easier than the Bible.
Is it?
You read it translated in English. It's a lot more basic. It's. I mean, I don't see it as I don't think the Bible's intellectual, but it certainly is a lot more involved than the Quran. Quran's more like straightforward, blah 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 blah. You know, it's written a little bit easier, I think. At least the translated that I read.
The Bible does kind of read like someone took Grimm's fairy tales and Game of Thrones and mashed them together. It's just, wow. I mean, that's what passed for literature back in the day. And I don't know what it is with the King James Bible, but they don't put any quotation marks around dialogue. So sometimes you have no idea that someone's actually speaking.
Yeah.
And oh, well, you know, like until you get further into the sentence, and it's like, oh, I see, you know. So there's that. I don't know. The Bible is, it's not the best book in the world. And maybe the problem is I'm reading the King James version. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't read the King. I did read the King James version when I was a Christian and the NIV version. NIV is a lot easier to read, but I'm just saying it's just some of the stuff just goes on and on and on and on and on. Sometimes it does that in the Quran, like it will say stuff, but yep. I threw mine in the garbage.
I'm using this as a mouse pad.
Oh.
Well, actually, I mean, because
You found a good use for it, is what you're saying.
I interviewed a pastor a while back about reading the Bible. You know, I said to him, I'm an atheist, and I'm considering reading the Bible, and asked him a whole bunch of questions about it, and he gave me that NIV version. You know, I told him I was going to read King James because it seems to be, well, I don't want to say the standard, but it's the most well-known, most commonly referred to, referenced. And he gave me the NIV to, you know, as an alternative. I didn't use it, but I still have what he gave me, so.
Yeah. Yeah, the King James has a few errors too because of when it was written. They translated things incorrectly, but yeah. But I mean, it really doesn't matter. The whole thing is actually false, so it doesn't really make much of a difference.
Well, I mean, by the same token, I wouldn't mind someday doing a critique of one of my other favorite books that deals with religion heavily. Is Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert Heinlein. That is an amazing book, and in many ways, it kind of taught me a lot of the tools I'm using now for critiquing religion. Because one of the main characters, Jubal Harshaw, he's I don't want to say he's necessarily an anti-theist, but he kind of comes off that way at times. I mean, he's definitely, I don't know, he vehemently criticizes a lot of religions and using a lot of logic and reason the way a lot of us do. So in a way, it kind of got me started on being the debater, the presenter, whatever, that I am now. So it's a book that, honestly, I mean, but it's fiction. It's not real, just like the Bible is.
Yeah, so. Exactly, like the Bible. But the Bible doesn't have that much logic and reason in it, though.
True.
It's more just fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, fantasy and threats.
And, okay, I don't know how true this is, but I've heard people say that Stranger in a Strange Land was actually Heinlein's response to Scientology. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I heard.
Yeah, I don't know. Scientology is definitely a whacked religion, too.
Yeah, it's one I haven't really touched yet. I wonder if I should. There's actually downtown Seattle, I want to say it's the corner of 3rd and Pine, I'm not sure. There's a Scientology office. So, yeah.
Yeah, you should. I mean, I think that too many atheists, to me, just focus on Christianity. I'm not going to do that. It's all whacked. I mean, it all needs to be challenged. None of it needs to be given, you know, a free ride, to me. But
true, but like I've been saying, I'm mostly doing this because of how religion mistreats people. I mean, there's a reason I don't touch Judaism that often, except that, okay, don't get me started on the whole MRA thing, but I am totally on their side when it comes to circumcision. That's a choice everyone should make for themselves when they're old enough. And so in that way, I might object to Judaism. But otherwise, I mean, they seem, at least in the United States anyway, pretty hands-off in exactly the way Christianity isn't. So, you know, we don't get a lot of Islam in the United States either. Now, I mean, granted, I should have a larger view, I suppose, but at the same time, we should tackle what we feel is most important and what we feel that we're best at. You know, I'm sure there's other people who are just as good as I might be at going after United States Christianity as, you know, like doing the Middle East. I'm sure there's people who do that. So, you know, I'll have my specialty, they can have theirs. You know.
No, I don't think it's wrong to have a specialty. I mean, you could do just Catholicism and never do any other branch of Christianity. I don't think there's a have to. I'm just saying that it seems like so many atheists don't feel a need to. That's all I was saying. You know, it's like as long as you, well, because I hear them say stuff like if you read the Bible, you'd be an atheist. Well, that would only work if you're Christian. I mean, that's not going to work if you're Muslim. They already don't think the Bible is, or if you're Hindu, it's not going to change you to be an atheist if you're a Hindu. If you would, you know, it's surreptitiously, you know, read the Bible.
Well, it's kind of like, now, granted, this is a purely semantic argument, and I know that, but whenever people say, oh, we're all atheists with regard to everyone's religion, I'm just, again, you know, an atheist with one more. Well, no, you're not. If you believe in any gods, if the number of gods you believe in is more than 0, you're not an atheist. You know, now, granted, that's purely semantic. It really is, because I understand what they're trying to say, but you know, when we get into the definitions of words like atheist, which not everyone defines the same way, it can get really sticky. And I don't know, I tend to prefer a definition that's a lot more, clinical is the wrong word for it, technical. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a lot more technical just because it makes it easier to have the conversation. But it seems like a lot of the definitions people use are more, I don't want to say emotion-driven, but there's certainly a matter of it feels right to use it this way rather than that way, as opposed to here's a way to be able to like make categorical descriptions of what's actually going on.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I hear a lot of people say babies are atheists, but that's a difference between implicit and explicit atheism. Implicit atheism, I mean, a tomato is an atheist because it doesn't have a belief in a God, but that doesn't make it actually a reasoned position.
Well, no, but I mean, it doesn't have to be a reasoned position. That's something that I have a difficult time getting some people to understand or agree with. Is that you know, there is no in between. There is no I'm not a theist or an atheist. You have to be one or the other. I mean, granted, like you say, it's not always a reasoned position, but that's why we have adjectives like implicit and explicit, strong and weak, all of that, is to be able to say, okay, category atheist, subcategory this, that, or the other thing. I mean, again, it's a much more technical way of approaching it. Rather than, I mean, I understand why some people object to saying a tomato or a baby is an atheist because it's not a reasoned position, but you know, it's still true, you know, it's still the case, and it's really difficult to have the conversation if we don't have a word for. Like a whole separate category for those who have not made the reasoned decision. That's why we need those adjectives attached onto the front of the words so that it gives people a more accurate view of what's going on. It's kind of like when we have, you know, species, genus, kingdom, phylum, I don't know the order, but, you know, for classifying animals, it's like you're describing things by the traits they have. But like I say, it seems like a lot of people have more of an emotional context for these things, where they're not so much describing the traits as they are, I'm on this side of the battlefield, you know.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I always like to ask people what their idea of atheism is. But what I think is the most funny is no matter how we disagree, even if you and me disagreed on everything about atheists, we're not going to go and bomb people. It's like, we're not going to start a hate group. I mean, the people, you know, that's like I agree with you about going against religion. I mean, I won't go against an atheist for calling themselves whatever they like. I mean, even if I disagree and I think it's bizarre or they think my position is bizarre, it's funny how we can do that without, you know, harming each other. It's funny how we can do that with, like I said, without doing hate groups or, you know, trying to go and kill or destroy or threaten or remove rights for people. And it's something that doesn't seem to happen with believers. You know, nothing separates people like religion does. It does it extremely well, and it usually makes an other, and then the other is something you can hate, and once you hate things, then you can see a reason to try to remove their rights or destroy them. And
I mean, the closest I've ever seen to the way religion divides people is when someone tries to say that Star Trek is better than Star Wars or they're both better than Doctor Who. Oh my gosh, I've seen it almost come to blows. But other than that, you know.
Yeah. I don't really have much opinion. I like Star Trek and Star Wars. I don't watch any of Doctor Who, so I don't have any opinion at all.
I like Tom Baker, but I mean, anyway. I'm actually, one of the projects I'm working on right now is sort of like Star Wars meets Star Trek meets the Jetsons meets Buzz Lightyear. Like, imagine if Buzz Lightyear had Star Trek's mission. It's sort of what I'm doing with kind of the visual style of the Jetsons, but there's definitely going to be some of that Star Wars space combat going on too. So
that's cool. Yeah. I would say one of the things I do like about Star Wars, I mean, Star Trek that Star Wars doesn't do, not so much the thing, but the idea of, you know, pushing the agenda of racial equality or intermixing or stuff. And I like that idea of, you know, putting in some of the values. You know, would you ever think of doing that in your animation?
Well, yes and no. I mean, one thing that I think Star Trek kind of got wrong was that the fight has already been won. You know, like in their universe, it's already been won. So there's nothing to discuss. There's no like here's why we should be equal. Now, granted, I do like the idea of a universe where everyone has already had that fight and it's over and reason won. I mean, that's great. You know, and I can see someone advocating for showing it that way, so that it can be like, okay, look at how few problems we have when the world is like this.
Right.
You know, I see that as a benefit, but at the same time, I mean, maybe I'm just a fighter by nature. Maybe I just like conflict by nature. But I think I would find, even just as fiction, I'd find it a lot more interesting to see that fight being waged and eventually won, rather than, you know, starting out from the finish line.
Right. So you think that you might add some of that then in your animation, or?
I don't know. I mean, right now I don't have a plan for it, but in the story that I've got in mind for the animation I'm working on, I can see a way that it might possibly be worked in if I really wanted to. So,
I just think it's interesting because you do, you know, on your page, like you said, you started out, I mean, your YouTube channel, you started out with a desire for it to be, you know, your animation, then you brought the religion, you know, or atheism to it. So I just think it would seem like a natural progression, possibly, for you to to go backwards. You took, you know, the animation, you brought religion, maybe your atheism could be brought into your animation. That's all I was.
Well, I mean, possibly, but a large part of what I want to do in animation is to sort of hark back to my childhood a little. You know, the movies that inspired me to want to make that, like to do audiovisual storytelling. And, you know, it would be nice to take a breather from the issues for a while. You know, even if it's only a separate project. Because, I mean, obviously I'm not going to stop making videos while I'm working on this thing.
Right.
But, you know, so sometimes it's good to take a step back and just tell a story without an agenda.
Oh yeah, I understand. I like to do art sometimes. It's just that I don't think about things. It's just a joy of creating. So yeah, I can feel that.
And I also kind of want to do a Tron fan film at some point.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
I've been trying to make one of the characters, and doing all those wires and lines on the helmet and the uniform. My gosh, that's tedious. You know, so.
And if you're talking about cosplay.
Not really. Not really. It's not my thing. Plus, one of the reasons I do animation is because you have the ability to save. There's an undo button. When it comes to arts and crafts, you don't have that. And, you know, the number of times I've just royally fucked something up because I made a cut in the wrong place, or you know, I couldn't keep my lines even or something. It was just like, you know, I mean, maybe if I could go out and buy a costume, maybe, you know. But, and even then, I mean, I have friends who do cosplay. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's stupid or anything, because it's not. I just don't get the appeal. You know, it's not something where I would totally think it's awesome to do it. Maybe if I was going to conventions, you know, like a sci-fi con, maybe then I'd do it. But I haven't been to one of those in ages. I've been to atheist conventions, but it's been a while since I've been to a sci-fi con.
So when you went to atheist conventions, did you speak or give a lecture, or?
Although I've had some people suggest that I should, but in all honesty, I don't know how I do if I mean, again, back to the arts and crafts thing. With a camera, I can, you know, do cuts. I can do multiple takes. If I flub what I'm saying in some way. I mean, I have bionic bloopers videos where I collect all of the funniest flub-ups and put them all together into like 3-4 minutes of just me making an ass of myself. Because like I say, if you can't laugh at yourself, the whole world will do it for you. So if I was going to get up at a podium and speak, I mean, maybe I would have rehearsed it for a while. Maybe I would have written something out. I don't know, but I don't know if I really want to do that. I mean, maybe I'd be awesome at it. I don't know, but I don't know. Heck, maybe if I could make a video and just show it to the audience, and then get up for questions after. I don't know. So.
Well, have you ever seen where they do a video at the same time they talk about the video they're showing? Maybe you could do that.
Maybe. Well, it's worth a thought. But no, usually I just go to conventions, you know, to see fellow YouTubers, to watch the talks, of course. But some of the room parties are fun too. You know, I mean, conventions are conventions, even if they are about, you know, legitimate socio-political issues. So, you know, in fact, there's some friends. We have this tradition of going out and getting fondue every convention that we go to. But it's funny how that happened, because the first time they suggested it, they were like, "Hey, Kate, you want to do some fondue and archery?" And I was like, "Archery?" You know, it just seems so weird to me. And so I'm like, well, fondue sounds fun, and actually I like shooting bows and arrows, so I said to them, sure, why not? But still, the whole day I'm like, archery seems like such a weird combination with the fondue. And then later that night, they're like, so we're on for fondue, right? And I'm like, yeah. And they go, and like I said before, our treat.
Our treat.
Yeah, so I told them what I thought they said, and now every convention we go for fondue and archery. So, yeah. So like I said, conventions are a great place to meet other YouTubers, other atheists. You know, sometimes people who just watch your stuff and don't make any content themselves. There's a lot of folks who come in from other countries. I mean, DPR Jones has been at almost every convention I've been to. Now I realize, I think she says, "Oh my God, it's Chris." I always look at her name and say Zomgets, but she's always there, you know, and she's a blast to hang out with too. There's a lot of other folks. You know, it's a good time. It really is.
So what would you say is the best convention? I'm going to be going to the one, Imagine No Religion, up in Canada, and going to the American Atheists.
Yeah, American Atheists has so far been the best for me. Yeah.
Cool. And how many times have you gone?
Twice now.
Twice?
Yeah. This year it's in Memphis. Last year it was in Salt Lake City. And before that it was Austin. So there was another one I went to. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it was in Missouri. Like this fall, this winter, something like that. Yeah, that was not as wild and crazy as American Atheist. That wasn't. It was much smaller, much more subdued. It was still a good time, but it's not the same.
Yeah. Well, I hope it's fun. I haven't gone to any yet. So,
Yeah.
I've been an atheist for about 7 years, but I've probably been really active for about 3.
Oh, I totally forgot to mention Matt Dillahunty has been at almost all of those too. Oh, and hanging out with David Silverman is fun. And last American Atheist, I was playing Magic the Gathering with a bunch of people in the penthouse. Had no idea the guy kicking my ass to my left was not only the keynote speaker, but was also Chris Cluey, the kicker who got kicked off of his football team for being an atheist. You know, so like I say, it's a really good time. Sorry, I wanted to mention other people that for some reason slipped my mind. So, Ron's there a lot.
Yeah. No, actually, no, I take it back. I did go to a Secular Humanist conference in San Diego when I was living in California. When Aaron Raw was there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever been to San Diego, but I've been to LA and Santa Cruz and San Francisco. So, yeah. Well, I mean, that's one thing about these atheist conventions also, is that American Atheist, David Silverman, says he wants to hold them in places that aren't actually atheist-friendly because, you know, why preach to the choir, so to speak, right? You know, go places where you can make some waves, that kind of thing. So I get to go to parts of the country I never would have gone to before. I mean, I can't imagine having ever gone to Tennessee, but that'll be, you know, coming up in a few weeks. Salt Lake City, I mean, heck, I brought my copy of Battlestar Galactica with me just for laughs. You know that the original Battlestar Galactica is basically Mormons in space, right?
No, I did not.
Oh, it totally is. Seriously, if you compare the two, you can start to see all the parallels. And the guy who created it is a Mormon, so seriously, it's space Mormons.
Oh, I liked Battlestar Galactica. I thought it was cool. Yeah, I didn't know that. So would you ever read, speaking of the Mormons, would you ever read the Book of Mormon or no?
I don't know. I mean, I would consider it. But again, I mean, I have to finish the Bible first, and that's a chore. So we'll see.
Yeah, I know that I had. Used to be a truck driver, and I used to teach other truck drivers. And I got a student. I used to be based out of Salt Lake City, and I got this student that he was a Mormon, and he brought this book. It's a gigantic book, and I'm like, wow, that Book of Mormon's humongous. He's like, well, it's 3 books. It's the Book of Mormon, it's the King James Bible, and the Pearl of Great Price. And I said, well, let me look at it.
What was that last one?
The Pearl of Great Price or something. I mean, I may be quoting it wrong. That's what I remember. I don't know exactly, but some story, some other, like, I don't know, supposed to teach you something. I think like. But anyway, so I said, well, let me look at it. He didn't want to let me look at it, and he said, well, Mormons don't let people look at their book, and I'm like, well, why not? And he's, this is just for us. And so anyway, I don't know if that's true, but that's what he told me. But I said, you know, what if you could convert me? You know. Why wouldn't you want to show me? I said, give it to me. So he gave it to me. I started reading the thing out apart about the history. It said something about like that, you know, the Jews were part of the Native Americans. I was done, right? What the? I didn't even feel like I needed to read the rest. I'm like, hey, I'm already done. This is like total nonsense here.
I mean, Mormonism is one of the wackier ones from everything I've heard about it. I don't know. But at the same time, Mormons seem to be the most hands-off when it comes to other people. When it comes to people who aren't part of their religion, they don't seem to make too many waves. And so for that, at least, I can respect them. You know, even if I think everything else about them is completely wacko-jacko, you know, the way that they're not interfering with everybody else is at least a note in their favor. So.
Yeah, I don't see them as, but I see most religions in general affecting the children, just like you said with the Mormons. I mean, I'm not against people having plural marriage. I am against forced polygamy, which, you know, there definitely happens in Utah. You know, I think it harms the girls and it harms the boys. I mean, I see that there's even like you could say, well, the Amish don't really, you know, do anything to other people. No, but they make sure that their kids have all these different things. You know, it's like they don't have medical care that's proper. You know, it's just a bunch of things that no one else could actually get away with. I think it's, you know, so I know what you're saying. They may not affect us, but I don't think that, you know.
No, I'm just saying that puts them one notch higher than the other religions. I'm not saying they're not still running a deficit.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm not saying that evangelical Christians are not trying to tear, you know, all of our lives apart, because I believe they are.
Hmm.
You know, I think like didn't you have that one video where the guy, you know, says that we're going to be cannibals or whatever? I mean.
Oh yeah, that guy, Manning, not Private Manning. David something, James David Manning, I think it was, that the guy, he, like, apparently he was in prison at one point and had some same-sex attraction and thinks he fought through it or something, and now he thinks that, I don't even know, the guy's a complete nut bar. I mean, some of the things that he says, like, he's the guy who thought that Starbucks was putting semen in the coffee. You know, this guy's a whack job. He really is.
Right, and like I'm saying, the thing is that if religion gives them a platform, though, you know, where someone would actually take any other person in society said that, everybody would shun them, you know, in general. But religion's the one place you can say stuff like that, and people are like, well, he has a good point, you know.
I'd love to see if just for a while we could swap religion and UFO abductees and see, you know, how much more seriously people take religion when we swap them back. You know.
Yeah, that would be funny. So what would you say is so your goal is for people to become more science-minded? I know you said a lot of your videos say, you know, to think. When you say think, you're saying think without faith, or you're saying think about, you know, using science? I mean, what
It's more the faith thing, really. You know, it's a matter of don't take things for granted. You know, don't just assume, don't just have faith, but check to make sure is really what that's about. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love science, I really do. But that's, I mean, my goal is more to have people be critical thinkers. You know, if they know jack shit about science, but they're at least employing, say, a vaguely scientific method to determining whether something is true or not, you know, to check, to get evidence, to, you know, put it all together, maybe even to run the odd experiment or two. You know, not necessarily with like graduated cylinders and weights and stuff, you know, but just, you know, just checking to make sure that their assumptions are based in reality in some way. You know, really that is a large part of my goal. But as I said before, it's more a matter of that's a way to get people to see that their religion that they're using to make other people's lives worse is a steaming pant load of bullshit, and they should stop believing in it. You know, because if they stop believing in it, then hopefully that means they'll stop mistreating people, or at least stop mistreating people in a way that they think they're justifying by their religion. You know, I mean, even if we eliminate religion entirely, people are still going to be jerks to other people, but at least we've eliminated one way for them to use as an excuse. You know?
Yeah. So see, like you said, if you remove religion, and I do agree, if you remove religion, it doesn't make you automatically a good person or a person that understands people should have rights. So speaking of which, you being a female in the atheist movement, I know some other females have told me that, you know, that they seem to have either not be taken serious or have negative pushback from some male atheists. Have you experienced that?
Maybe not in the same way, but yes. I've had people who don't like me try to cut me down, not because of my arguments, but apparently to a lot of people I'm not that attractive. I mean, I've had other people say, no, don't listen to them, yes you are. But at the same time, like there was this recent conflict with this Atheism is Unstoppable guy, which I don't want to get into the specifics because it was just a big, horrible mess. But apparently when he decided to attack me, apparently he did it mostly on my looks rather than my points. Or at least that's what I was told by people. I never actually watched his video. But everyone, like everything I got from osmosis, because let's face it, there was no way I was not going to hear about it. Apparently that's how he attacked me. And I've had other people try to not take me seriously by saying, oh, what an ugly bull dyke, you know. So that's happened. But rarely has it been like, oh, you're a chick, you can't possibly think rationally, why should we take you? So that's never happened. It's never been like a challenge of knowledge or authority or ability to think. It's you know, I mean, that's happened too, but not as, oh, you're a girl, therefore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that people that would think like that are being stupid. And even if, and I don't think you're ugly, but even if they did think you're ugly, what does that have to do with anything? I mean,
well, that's the thing, though, is, I mean, even among the atheist community, even among people who think that we're supposed to be rational, you know, there's still that emotional content there, where if you can say, aha, you're ugly, you're stupid, and it's like a playground, it really is, you know, that can turn people, like people who never knew me, who never heard my side in that conflict, came to my channel and started just ripping me to shreds because of what the other person had said. You know, and I'm like, that's not very rational in a community of people who claim to be critical thinkers. So, you know, like I say, there's that emotional element to it too. There's definitely a kind of social hierarchy in a way, you know, unspoken, but still.
Right, and then you also had mentioned about being a bull dyke. So you were mentioning that which is basically refer. No, I know some. My point is, I'm saying is. That would be a reference to you being gay or a lesbian. So
yeah.
If you experienced any negative stuff besides that one comment, I mean, or whatever you were saying, have you experienced the issue with being gay? Because I know some guys, if a woman isn't available to them or whatever, somehow they take that as like a threat or something. I mean, I'm not saying they always do, but I mean. Has that something you experienced in the atheist community, or has it been basically totally welcoming?
I mean, the people who are saying, oh, what an ugly bull dyke, could have said, oh, what an ugly tomboy, and it would have been the same thing. The closest I've gotten really to what you're describing is almost the opposite, where people go, "Oh man, you're not available. I wish you were." You know, so it's kind of been less like we hate you for it, and more a matter of damn it, you know. So, and in a way that's flattering. It really is. But you know, usually when people make reference to me being a lesbian, it's also in conjunction with, you know, therefore you're that sort of ugly lesbian stereotype, you know, which is not nearly as true, by the way, as people like to think, but as much as, you know, it is kind of a popular meme, a popular trope to think that, you know, the less petite feminine lesbians are this sort of like flannel-wearing bull dyke sort of thing. I mean, that is a prevalent stereotype, so that's how people will attack more than anything else.
Yeah, to me, even if someone was a flannel-wearing bull dyke, you know, cool. I mean, I don't see where what does that? For me personally, I'm saying that. What does that matter? If you're a good person, and especially if you're an atheist, I like you. Why would I care less if you did that? I mean, so. Even the same thing for a guy. I mean, I'm straight, but if a guy is super flamboyant and girly, whatever. I mean, what is that? I mean, people. I hope that all atheists welcome everyone. I mean, I think that should be, you know, a thing to show, like you said about critical thinking. Our community should be based on reason and thinking, or should at least aspire to that, even if it can't achieve it.
Yeah, well, I'd like to think so. And I mean, I'm trying to think, when was the last time I decided I didn't like somebody or even hated somebody based on something other than a position they've taken. I'm having a hard time doing it. You know, I mean, because I've got friends who are from every race, from every gender, from every, like, gosh, I don't know. How many other ways can we classify people? Every economic, you know, level, that kind of thing. You know, it's really difficult for me to think of man. I mean, I will jokingly say that I don't much care for French Canadians, but that's because I was a Vermonter living real close to the border, and there was kind of a love-hate thing going on. You know, it's not there. There isn't really a real sort of like actual animosity there. It's more tongue-in-cheek than anything else. And when was the last time I disliked somebody on the basis of anything other than something they'd said or done or a position they'd taken? I don't know. Weird. Man, I'm sure there must have been something. I'm sure there must be. And I bet you there's someone in the comments section right now going, I remember, you know, but I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that, personally for me either, that I could think of something. I mean, when I was a Christian, yes. And I know you weren't a believer, but when I was a Christian, I felt justified to hate. That's why I laugh when they say that, you know, Christians have morality. I had less morality then than I do now. I had less compassion for the world then than I do now. Before, I thought it was okay for things bad to happen to people. They should happen. Now, I hope that nobody has bad things happen.
Yeah, I mean, okay, granted, I'd love to see bad things happen to William Shatner, but that's another issue entirely. But no, otherwise, I agree.
Yeah, so why is it that you don't like Star Wars? I mean, or Star Trek, excuse me.
I like Star Trek. What's wrong with Star Trek? I mean, I like it less than Star Wars, but I like Star Trek.
Oh, because you're saying you just don't like William Shatner?
Shatner is evil and must be destroyed for the good of us all.
Why is that?
Because he's Shatner.
I think he's hilarious. Kind of like you, he's hilarious.
Hey, you take that back.
And I don't want you to be destroyed. I think it's fun. I think you add a spice to atheism that we need. I think we need a lot of different kinds of atheism. I think that there's not one way that's you know gonna do it for everybody. So I think that it's wonderful to have, you know, the whole rainbow of kinds of atheists. I mean, there's people that I don't, you know, feel the closest to it, or I hope that, you know, there's people that get to. Like you, I really hope that people think critically. And the biggest thing is I really don't like about religion, to me, is it demoralizes the individual. It makes you feel ashamed to just be yourself. you know, and I really find that to be, even if everything else, like you said, they didn't try to, you know, destroy society. To me, they undermine a lot of people's, you know, self-worth. Like you said, like, I mean, they really work hard to make people feel ashamed to be gay. I mean, and I find that to be, for me, morally repugnant.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just some of the indoctrination they do, and the ways, like you were saying, the way they make people feel ashamed to be who they are. Like, I don't think it's in every denomination of Christianity, but a lot of them are like, you are always a sinner, you are always in trouble with God, and so you always have to repent, you always have to be scared, and that is a way to keep people in line. You know, is to make them afraid of what might happen to them if they don't behave. You know, it's the whole carrot and the stick thing. But, you know, taking it that far to say there is nothing you can do to stop being a sinner, to stop being something you shouldn't be, to stop being low, to stop being, you know, filthy, that is not something that I think should be allowed. You know, that's abuse. So...
Right, and that's what I'm trying to say is that, like, say if you're never really religious, but if you have people around you, like in your society, saying, you know, gay people, you know, are gonna, like that one guy, are going to eat people's bodies, or, you know, or are doing stuff the morally wrong. You keep hearing this, it's going to create, you know, it can create, you know, internalized homophobia where you hate yourself. And even if you're not even part of the religion, you can still be tainted by that you know, self-hate.
Yeah.
So did you ever feel anything like that? Any internalized homophobia, or did you always feel, or still feel like, you know, never affected you?
I mean, I moved from very tolerant Vermont. I mean, it wasn't the first state to have gay marriage, but they had civil unions first. I moved from there to really super tolerant Seattle.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, like, I live in what essentially is Seattle's gay district, Capitol Hill, and it's. I mean, even outside of the hill, it's like nobody cares. You can be anything. You can walk down the street dressed like freaking Gandalf, and people might look, but whatever. You know, I mean, we're not as weird as Portland, Oregon, and there's a slogan, "Keep Portland Weird," but we're very similar in terms of style of weird. I mean, Seattle has Phoenix Jones, the first real superhero guy. I don't know if you remember seeing him in the news. You know, and that's like sort of a thing Seattle does. We have the Fremont Solstice Parade, and a lot of people are giving me shit for being in that, because the Solstice Parade has traditionally begun by being crashed by several hundred naked, body-painted people on bicycles, or in my case, rollerblades. Right? And someone got a hold of some of the pictures from the painting party where I was being painted as Rainbow Dash from My Little Pony. And that ended up on, I want to say it was Reddit, might be Tumblr, I don't know, one of those, where someone realized it was me, and the next thing you know, I'm getting a mountain of shit for it. You know, but I mean, that's the sort of thing.
So question: who'd you get a mountain of shit from? From people in the atheist community?
Oh well, yeah, a lot of folks from the atheist community. The folks who, like I say, didn't like me. Apparently, some people have taken quite the vehement dislike, while other people are borderline cultists, which is kind of weird. Hold on, I don't even want to put that. That's tongue in cheek. But there are definitely some very loyal followers, some very loyal subscribers to my channel. I don't want to say followers, because that implies I lead them, but you know what I'm saying. You know, but like I say, that's the sort of thing Seattle does. Seattle has all of this wackiness to it that makes it so that when I'm living here, I don't feel any of that like disdain or the you know, the sort of scrutiny that says, what's going on with you? Why are you like this? You know. I mean, like I'll walk down the street and have people say how cool the hair color is, you know, that kind of thing. It's like, I mean, total strangers will say it. It's just a really tolerant place here. Even the people who probably don't much care for folks will keep their mouths shut, you know, because they know that they're actually the ones who will get crap for it if they try to make someone else's life worse. So, like I say, I mean, between Vermont and Seattle, I never really felt that sort of, I don't know if oppression or repression is the right word, but either one of those. you know.
So you're pretty lucky then, because you had a relatively non-believing life, and then you go from a liberal area to liberal area. I think a lot of people could probably wish that they had your life to be able to gone through that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hear some of the horror stories of what other people have gone through, and on the one hand, I'm really glad that never happened to me. On the other hand, it makes it a little difficult to empathize at times. I mean, I sort of get it. I sort of get it, but it's the sort of thing where if you didn't live through it, you can't really get it. And so a lot of people might think that I'm kind of an ivory tower atheist, that I never had to go through all the crap, that I've always just been sort of above it all. So speaking out against it might, I don't know if hypocritical is the right word, but it might seem a little, I don't know, like I'm speaking from a position of not really understanding. I don't know. I mean, then again, I'd like to think that I do still have the ability to make a reasonable, cogent point about it, even if I don't have the first-person experience to be able to empathize directly. I'd love to believe that, Yeah,
I know what you're saying, because I think people feel sometimes, I don't think it's actually valid, though, that it's impossible to sympathize with someone who hasn't gone through it. I mean, I go to gay prides and try to promote reason and atheism at gay prides, and I care about gay people. I'm not gay. I've never been gay. It never even occurred to me. In fact, it so didn't occur to me. It was so funny when I was, I don't know, 15 to 14. I used to have a friend who would come to my house, and I had a king-size waterbed. And he slept with one blanket and a pillow on one side of the bed, and I slept on the other. I didn't even think anything of it. And one of my friends told me, "You guys are sleeping in the same bed?" I go, "Well, we're using different pillows and blankets, not touching each other." But it was so funny because I never even thought about it. Because I was also raised very conservative religion, so I didn't think about gay people. Period. I mean,
right.
I didn't know there was such a thing, really. If you would ask me at a certain age, I was very, very sheltered. Till 13, we never watched TV, never listened to radio. We only went to church 3 times a week. I mean,
wow.
So I had I didn't have any basis really to understand how the world was. So it was a very shocker to me when I started learning more stuff. But even me coming from a place of really not understanding, I can understand that, wow, people hating me for just being me would be the most terrible thing there is. And I can add compassion that, man, because what if someone said that was, like I often people say, when did people become gay? Well, when did I decide to be straight? I mean, I don't remember deciding that. It was just something I always felt. So I think it's wrong how people play. So I don't think I think it's great if you speak out about stuff, whether you really experienced it. I mean, I certainly had a more religious life than you did, but I don't see that as a like somehow you can't have a right to speak out about it.
Well, also, I mean, just something you just said, I think that a lot of people make the assumption that there are certain defaults in life, that everyone starts out straight and you have to decide to be gay.
Yeah. Exactly.
And a lot of the time when people, even atheists, will say, well, when did you become an atheist? That sort of makes the assumption that you started out religious. Even if you weren't necessarily born that way, you were raised with it from day one, and so you were religious all your life. The idea that someone was never religious really in any substantive way doesn't even really seem to occur to people. And that's an assumption I actually would love to fight as well. But I think it would be an uphill battle for the next at least several decades, simply because it's going to still keep happening that people are generally raised religious, like the vast, vast, vast majority. I understand that in many ways I'm an exception. And in fact, there are a lot of ways that I'm an exception to things that I couldn't even choose. I mean, I'm a left-handed adopted multiracial lesbian atheist. The atheist part is the only bit that I have any control over. So it's like I was just born to be a minority. What am I going to do?
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that's a lot of different things, definitely. So I think it's really good though that you're able to come out and I think that one of the things is there's too many just men in our movement. So I think it's great when women come out and say that it's okay not to believe.
Well, they have done some like statistics and found that women tend to be more religious than men, and a lot of the time I have to wonder why. And most of the reasons that occur to me honestly sound sexist, you know. But at the same time, I don't have any.
Sorry, could you explain those?
Well, like there's that assumption that women tend to be more emotional than men, and religion definitely has an emotional component, you know. But at the same time, I'm sure already right now we've got a bunch of women typing, and I'm not more emotional. I can think logically, you know. And I'm like, that's obviously there are people on both sides that cross over, you know. And this is only a hypothesis with very little basis to it, and I freely admit that. But at the moment, I don't have any other real explanations, and so, you know, and like no part of me is asserting that this is true, and no part of me is saying that my mind isn't open to another reason. In fact, I'd love to have another reason because that reason sounds so sexist. I'd love it to be for some other reason, you know. That would be great. And that's actually something that's really difficult for some people to understand, too, is that when you take a position, it's not necessarily set in stone, you know. It's kind of like I keep demanding evidence from religious people. Show me that your God exists. Give me a reason to say so without faith, and you can change my mind. But, you know, a lot of the time people start getting very tied to their position and to assuming that they can't change your mind, that all they can do is fight with you. So it's difficult, you know. And I guess part of it could be my fault because I do tend to argue very vehemently for my side. But when someone produces a really good point, you know, especially something I hadn't thought of before, I will have that, oh, I see moment. That's happened, you know. But you have to actually be convincing. You have to actually have a good reason. Like I've had a lot of people seem to think that the way they argue matters more than what they're arguing. You know, where it's like, well, you're not taking me seriously. You're not listening to me. You're not changing your mind just because of what I've said. And I'm like, well, no, you need to give me more evidence. You need to give me a reason to think what you're saying is more than just what you're saying. And usually they don't do that. Usually they don't produce good reasons to change my mind. It's usually just loud argument. You know, I mean, granted, I'm probably guilty of that too, but I try to present people with, you know, links and like bits of evidence, reasons where I'm going, okay, from this data, I can reach this conclusion, you know, or here is data that contradicts what you're saying. And, you know, my mind can be changed if other people do that for me as well. You know, so how you argue and what you're arguing seem to have, I don't know, a huge difference on how your point is made, whether or not someone's mind will be changed. It's, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that I think that's, for me, I have a degree in psychology, and I think that sometimes, though, we rely too much on the psychological reasoning and figure that without understanding that sometimes people just do it because they don't like to do things. In other words, like, men may be more drawn towards atheism, it looks like, not because more men are atheists, but because it's easier for men to fight back, where they're already in society allowed to, you know, make or stand out, where most women in society, even if, you know, we don't have any general rule like, you know, Islam does or something, but in general rule, women are usually not allowed to, you know, or not, you know, welcome to give a lot of opinions and stay without being attacked brutally. So I think that it, because I mean, my wife is an atheist, but she doesn't like to go to meetups and do a lot of stuff because she doesn't want to argue with people.
Mm. Well, I mean, again, I guess maybe it's a product of where I was raised, but just about every woman I know is pretty outspoken about things. I mean, again, raised by hippies, so, you know, there were a lot of marches, there were a lot of protests, and then, you know, I come here to Seattle, and you know, same thing. People will go on marches and protests. It's not quite as, you know, sandal and soy eating, but it's still, you know, very similar in vibe. So there, I mean, I understand there are parts of the country where it's like, you know, women should be in the kitchen, but that's not so much here.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying, yeah, I wasn't saying it's in Seattle. I'm just saying in America in general. I mean, certainly, you know, it's more welcoming for a man to give his opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I go down to the Deep South and I say, you know, some kind of opinion about atheism, I'm less to be attacked than if a female does it. I mean, it's allowed for a man to break the rules, you know, be the lone wolf. I mean, that's generally not something that, you know, that a woman is inherently, you know, for American, you know, values usually allowed to do. So I'm just saying that I think that may be one of the reasons why it doesn't look like so many are, you know, coming out. They may actually be atheists. They're just not getting out there as much because they're, you know, it's not as safe, in other words.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Yeah. I mean, again, on the coasts, maybe not so much, but I can see it in the flyover states, you know, kind of. And again, I'm working mostly off of stereotypes here, but that's what I've got to work with, because honestly, I've been to, you know, Missouri, and I don't know if Arizona or New Mexico count, but otherwise I've been pretty confined to the coasts. So, you know.
Yeah. I've been to all the states.
Okay.
So I've definitely had a lot of experience, and I thought differently too, because coming from this little tiny niche where I lived in Southern California, I thought all of California was the same, and I learned very quickly that was absolutely not true. So I do know that it's when you're encapsulated in your ideas, it is sometimes hard because you haven't experienced. Like because of the little tiny place I was raised, I thought everybody was relatively not racist, or at least not that much. But I learned that was a total delusion.
Well, I mean, I wonder what it would be like to actually be in a place where, you know, racism was that blatant. You know, I mean, because I have not seen that outside of the news. And what I've seen on the news has horrified me. But it's really difficult to empathize, to fathom being in a place where that's happening. You know? In some ways, I'm glad. In other ways, it's kind of my loss. You know, because then I would be able to really justify some of my outrage far more than I feel like I can now. I mean, I'm still on the side of people who have that outrage, but you know, it's a very intellectual objection that I have. So.
Well, I don't think we have to personally experience everything to understand. You know, I don't have to watch someone be tortured to death to know that torturing someone to death is inherently wrong, or it can cause suffering to people, or it isn't justified. But I personally, 15 years ago, or maybe it's 20 years ago, I'm not very good on dates, but when I was first truck driving, and I went from, it was a real big time change for me going from California, and I went to, you know, Birmingham, Alabama, and it's about 20 years ago or something, maybe it's, I don't know, but it was weird. I saw this. I like ribs, so I saw this restaurant. You know, there was barbecue, and I thought, oh, cool. So I went in there, and this like hillbilly guy kept looking at me, and I'm thinking, the hell is he looking at? And then he asked me, why am I wearing an earring? And it was like, I've never had someone talk to me like that. I thought that was extremely weird. So I was like, you know, fuck you, you know. I sit down, I'm eating, and then these black couple comes in, and he looks at me like, you know, like, what are we going to do about this? And it was just like the most bizarre thing ever. And then 3 or 4 black, you know, youths come in and start playing video games. He pushes his food out, and he stands up, and he looks at me, and he's like, you know, we're going to go. I was like, screw you. Well, he went outside, got on the payphone, called some guys, and they got in the truck, a pickup truck, and stood in front of my big rig and waiting for me to come out there. And I knew they were probably not coming out there because they wanted to say nice things to me. And it was funny. I walk outside, and I'm thinking, I didn't want to. My truck was across the street. I was thinking, I don't want to walk over there. And these black guys who were outside, they told me, I don't think those guys mean you, you know, any well-being. He goes, "Would you like us to walk over there with you?" And it was the most surreal feeling to go to this deep South and have black people protect me from the white people. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever felt in my life. But it was the real, like you say, really an experience of, wow, race is not over here in Alabama.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this story you tell, I understand what you're saying, and I empathize with how you must have felt. But at the same time, it's just like, really, in this country of ours, that shit happens. I thought we were past this crap, you know.
I totally agree. I thought we were past it. But I guess that's what I'm saying is after driving around, I realized that, wow, it's not. Mm. And it also is really weird too, because it's not all the same. Like living in Texas, they're a lot more sexist against women, and in different areas, it's like different things. Like you said, just like you said, you realize that Vermont is different, and so is Seattle. Well, the rest of the United States, I think, is also that way. There's a lot of places that, man, it has not changed, and it's really. So I think that even though if someone thought you were in an ivory tower, I'm glad you're in the ivory tower, screaming down to people to be reasonable, because there is a need. So even if you were there, it doesn't remove its value.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's good. It's just it's one of those little things that kind of itches at the back of my head every now and then.
Well, I mean, but I think in general, if you stand up for something, someone else is going to stand up and think that you're wrong for standing up. I mean,
it's true. It's true.
People sometimes are really good at liking to hate people that have an opinion.
Yeah. So, although when you think about it, that is in and of itself having an opinion. So, Yeah. I mean, pointing out the hypocrisy of people rarely does any good for the conversation. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I make my videos, actually, is not to convince the person that I'm responding to, but to all the people watching. Because it's a lot easier to be told that you're being a hypocrite when it's indirect. When you're pointing out somebody else's flaws, when you're not the one in the crosshairs, it's a lot easier to accept it. It's a lot easier to say, yeah, they have a point and I have been wrong. Because being in the crosshairs will make people dig in their heels a lot of the time. So, yeah. I mean, I'm never going to convince most of the theists that I talk to, or talk at, I suppose, because it's rarely, like, real-time, one-on-one. But, I mean, and there have only been one or two people who've responded with, oh, I see what you mean. There was, like, this one guy who had made this video just railing on atheists, and I explained why he was wrong in my video, and he actually went, I hadn't thought of it that way. Thanks for pointing that out. And he was really nice about it, I mean, I was trying to be fairly civil in my rebuttal, and it worked. But that's so rare. Usually, you'll get someone who comes in, oh, you like flaming cunt, dyke, rat, bastard, it's like, dude, chill. There's one of my videos where I responded to some pastor guy, and there is still a debate going, this was like months ago, there's still a debate going on that video between him and someone else, Granted, when I made my video, he thanked me for pointing out his video to other people because he does not have nearly as many subscribers as I do. So, in a way, that's publicity, yay. But at the same time, there's still that debate going on, still, for months. And as a channel owner...
Could you tell us what it was on?
Oh, I don't even know. I'm not even paying attention at this point. Because, see, that's the thing. As a channel owner, I get emails telling me about every message left on my videos. Even conversations I'm not part of. And so it's gotten to the point where I almost want to disable replies to stop hearing this, stop having to click delete on that particular conversation. I'm not going to because I like free speech, but still it's starting to grate on me a little.
So is there ever been somebody who's tried to do a rebuttal video to your video?
Oh, sure, it's happened. Yeah. Rarely does it happen where they're civil about it. Rarely does it happen where it's not just like mockery and derision. But it has happened. You know, now I'd love to have an actual back and forth with somebody, you know, where we critique each other point by point. That would be lovely. It doesn't happen, but it'd be great.
Yeah. So who would you like to do that with the most? Is there a person that you've wish that I'd like to really go at him or have him try to challenge me?
Oh man, put me on the spot. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I mean, I'm tempted to say Venom Fang X because he was so much fun back in the day, but I'd really have to think about it.
And who is that? I don't know who that is.
Oh gosh. Like when atheism really started to blossom on YouTube, there were a couple of theists out there that were sort of like you know, as prominent as theists as, say, Dark Matter or Aaron Ra are as atheists. And Venom Fang X was one of them, and he made a constant fool of himself all over the place. In fact, there was one time when he actually had to make an apology video for something that he had said that was so off the wall, so wrong. It was years ago, so I don't even remember what it was, but the video is still up there. Venom Fang X apologizes to the internet. I mean, he and the weird thing is he kind of looks like Kirk Cameron.
Yeah.
You know, but apparently he stopped making videos and started going on some like talk show, not talk show, but convention circuit or something. I want to say it was with Ray Comfort. I don't remember though. I know he got recruited by some religious like organization to be a spokes guy. But no, I mean, there was a time, I mean, it's calmed down now, and I think it feels like a lot of the atheists like spot a new theist and immediately run them off of YouTube by making responses to them constantly. But back in the day, they were everywhere. I mean, there was like Venom Fang X, Jesus Freak 777, Shock of God, all of those guys, and it was a very lively back and forth. You know, I mean, you could get popcorn for this stuff. These days, it's not quite the same. So, I mean, it feels like we need new blood on both sides. Although I'd love to believe that the sort of dearth of religious videos worth responding to means we're winning. You know, as entertaining as it is to make these videos, I'd actually love to not have to and dedicate my channel back to my animation work. I'd love that. So...
Well, then, like you said, maybe there's some hope. The fact that it's dying off, I agree. The internet, to me, is definitely, if it does anything else, it allows us to have more access to information, and I think that often that, you know, allows us to make better, coherent arguments and understand reason. And then faith doesn't seem to come into picture when you're informed.
Yeah.
Well, we can hope it dies a death. I hope so.
Well, I mean, there have been some studies saying that religion or religious people will be a minority by like 2037. I'm not sure where they're getting that statistic, but apparently they've done some sort of extrapolation, you know. So that's cool, you know, 2037. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I am too. I think that... but even I think that the funny thing would be is that even if we are, you know, the majority and they're the minority, it won't be like the Dark Ages, like we'll be, you know, oppressing them or.
Right, and that's something they don't seem to get. You know, is that if we lose dominance, we'll lose like free speech, we'll lose the ability to express ourselves, to be ourselves, and no amount of explaining to them we won't do to you what you've done to us seems to help. You know, I mean, it's like that Pastor Manning guy that I just responded to, the one who's, you know, the semen in Starbucks, cannibalistic pedophiles, whatever. You know, that guy, I mean, you could not tell him that it won't become the Dark Ages. You can't tell him that his slippery slope, that allowing gay marriage will lead to pedophilia and cannibalism. You can't tell him that's not going to happen. You know, he's looking at us through the lens of his own bad example.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's so funny because they always go, oh, the dangers of secularism. It's like, what are you talking about? You know, you should welcome secularism.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, is a lot of it comes down to morality, of course. They're like, well, if you don't have God to dictate your morality for you, you know, how can you know how to behave? And it's like, well, I know what hurts. Don't you know what hurts? I don't need a God to tell me that I don't want to hurt, and to not hurt, I have to get other people to not hurt me, which means I have to not hurt them back. This is a very simple equation to make, and somehow, I understand that not everyone has the same idea of what is right and what is wrong, and that makes morality kind of uncertain, but at the same time, there are definitely some general trends that you can count on, like please don't hurt me.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think that science will help make that a more attainable thing, or do you think that that's not possible?
Which one? The atheism taking over thing, or what?
Well, I know I meant about morality or atheism, or not. I mean, science, giving us reasons to come up with better society. Or do you think it's not going to be involved?
No, I think that really has very little to do with it. At most, I think science will aid in having that sort of thing, where it's like, well, here's some technology that replaces what we use religion for, or something. I mean, if science came up with a way to make us at least medically immortal, where it's like, okay, we've found whatever makes your body degrade over time. And we can repair what makes you older, and you can essentially live forever barring accident or something. I mean, that could have a real effect on society. That could have a real effect on how we treat each other. I don't know. But aside from that sort of thing, aside from that sort of peripheral aid to how we live our lives, I don't think science has much to do with how we treat each other. With parsing morality or anything. I think that science is more of a support role with regard to that. Now, I love the idea of how science will change the rest of society. Give me interstellar space travel and I'm a happy camper. But,
So are you a transhumanist? Do you know what that is?
Yeah, I know what that is. And, I think it would be great to be. I've often wondered, could you have a mechanical brain? I understand that they are working on something where you can upload your thoughts, memories, whatever, into a robot and thus live forever, but that's not living forever. That's living forever by proxy. That's making a duplicate of yourself. But what if we had nanomachines that could go into your brain and piece by piece replace the synapses? You're still having the brain function. You're still thinking and feeling as yourself. So it's not like we're just scooping out your brain and putting in a mechanical one, because that biological brain was you. But if we replace piece by piece bits of your brain the way cells divide and replace each other, but in this case it's replacing it with mechanical bits, until finally your entire brain is mechanical, are you still you? Is it still your consciousness? I would say so, because you've maintained that continuity, even though you've completely replaced the biology, because you didn't do it all at once. So in that way, I think we could, I hate to use the word ascend, let's say transcend, the physical, biological form and essentially become, if not robots, at least cyborgs. I think that could happen. So I'm certainly hopeful in that direction. I'm not going to say I'm necessarily part of a movement or anything, but I certainly support the idea.
Cool. So do you have any questions for me, or any other statements you want to make, or any things you want to say about your blog, or?
No, just subscribe. You'll have a good time. I think you'll enjoy my videos. I like to have some sort of snarky, clever wit, banter, whatever. I like puns. So if you like some humor injected into your discussion of religion, hey, other than that, no, I don't have a lot to say. We've covered so many topics, and honestly, I'm a little brain fried at this point.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm sure there's other things to talk about, but it's one of those things where it's like I can't think of them because there's too many subjects bouncing around in my head at once, and yeah, if I had a chance to jump to my channel and find a video where I'm going, aha, that's an issue we didn't discuss, then maybe I'd do it, but other than that.
Well, I really appreciate your time, and I enjoyed hearing your ideas and your life and stuff. It was good, and I really wish your channel well, and I'm glad that you're part of atheism.
Oh, thank you. It was fun to do this too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Have fun.